I want to start now and talk about this reality. I was going to say concept or idea, this reality of unseen warfare. And I want to talk about it because I really believe, as we've experienced, this is a very powerful aspect of our spiritual lives. I just was talking to someone this morning about a visitor we had here last week who was heavily caught up in many things that are not of God and of His church. And when this person was nearing the end of the divine liturgy, they had a full-blown panic attack. And some people might look at that and say, oh, that's too bad. They got nervous. They're not used to big crowds. That's not it at all. They had a panic attack because their lives were not connected to Christ. And when the mysteries come out, and you see that, and you're present when it's there, the demons will put up a fight. Because as St. Diodorus says, before you're made a catechumen, where do the demons work from? Inside or outside? Inside. And when you're made a catechumen and you spit on the devil, the demons suddenly work from the outside. They start banging on the door. That's why some of you who have been baptized recently, you say, my life has gotten worse. Yeah, because now the demons aren't comfortable. Now they're on the outside banging on the door saying, hey, let us back in. And life can get painful that way. Okay? So to those of you who have been recently baptized, the answer to all of this is what? Stay close to Christ. You don't need to do anything special. You don't need to go and buy 20 new icons. You don't need to suddenly start praying for 3 hours. You certainly should not leave the church. If you leave the church, the game's over. If you leave the church, the devil wins. So if you want the devil to not win, what you do is you keep fighting, and you fight by drawing near to Christ. How do you draw near to Christ? What are some of the ways?
Prayer, fasting, repenting.
Yeah, everything you just said is the very basic, normal, Orthodox Christian life. Repenting, fasting, praying, receiving communion, going to the services. Nothing abnormal or extraordinary about that. This is just our life. Okay? This is not, I need to go and make 1,000 prostrations. I just have to go to church. And sometimes the real fight is, I have to go to church when I'm despondent and depressed. And if you can do that and chalk up a few victories in a row, it's like baseball. Okay, if you get a few good at-bats, suddenly you start hitting well again. But if you just say, you know what, take me out of the game, I'm not going to bat, well, you're never going to hit well again. You got to get a few good at-bats. There are all sorts of analogies, okay? But this idea of unseen warfare, I want to talk about this in the context of points of difference, as we've been doing. Because this reality of unseen warfare is something that is very unique to the Eastern Church, to the Orthodox Church. In the West, and I'm just going to speak as a former Protestant, we talked about the demons being active, but we never thought about the demons actively engaging us on a, not just day-to-day, breath-to-breath moment. In the West, this is how we understood our spiritual lives. Here's me. I'm the person who's baptized. Here is God. And this part of me never really changed. What changes is God now sees me differently. I've said it to you before, but you can go read it in I hesitate citing Luther because I did that and somebody shared it on Instagram and it got like 80,000 views. What was it, Michael?
It's like around 60,000.
60,000 views.
I saw it on the front.
But the reaction to it was people writing in like, he doesn't really know Luther, or why would you cite Luther in support of the Orthodox? Well, one, I do know Luther, okay? Because I was a Lutheran. And I've read Luther in German and Latin and English. And two, I can tell you exactly where he said it. And three, don't be a tough guy, listen to the whole interview before you comment. Okay? Which is why I didn't know it had all these interactions. And then somebody said to me, you know what, that Kenny G, he's your biggest defender. And I said, really? And they said, yeah, on the Insta, which I didn't know what that meant. On the Insta, there are all these comments very critical of the quote you gave. And Gabriel is going one by one saying, watch the whole interview. Watch the whole interview. Did you watch the whole interview? Clearly you didn't watch the whole interview. Did you watch it? And I'm like, I love that kid. I love you. What's that?
He cited the quote.
And then he finally cited the quote from Luther, from Luther's works. Like, okay, if you don't want to watch the whole interview, here's the quote from Luther's works. So I'm going to quote Luther, and for anybody who might watch this later, I know Luther, okay? Luther said, we are, as Christians, like snow-covered dung. That you never change. You here are still really, really crummy and dirty, but God just sees you differently. And in a way, the Roman denomination, while they take a slightly different approach in reaction to Luther, speaks in much the same way. This is what in the West they would call the forensic approach to our salvation. Forensic meaning like a judicial setting. I come in as guilty. God sees me. My guilt does not change. God just says, you're no longer guilty. So who changes? Me or God? God does. I'm not changing at all. In the Eastern Fathers, and frankly in the West, well before the Reformation, this was not the perspective. There was this understanding that the Christian was not just called something he wasn't, but he actually was called to become that other. Right? What does what does Irenaeus say? God became man that man might become God. Okay, that we're transformed into the likeness of God himself. As the other fathers say, God is God by nature, man becomes God by what?
Grace.
By grace. By our union with Christ. So this reality of unseen warfare. What do I mean by unseen warfare? I mean the warfare that's happening that we don't see with our eyes. Like in this room right now, there are demons trying to attack all of us. And the only reason we're not dying is because, one, you've received the mysteries today, which is the medicine of immortality, as the fathers say, so that, as Ignatius says, so you will not die. Literally, so you won't die. Not physically, you're all going to die physically. But we don't care about physical death. You won't die eternally. And on top of that, you have a guardian angel. If you've been made a catechumen and given an angel, assigned to their life an angel of light, these are not empty words. We actually speak realities in the church. So we're saying God assigned to this person a guardian angel. So you have someone defending you. So we don't need to be scared. It's not the kind of thing where like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going to happen. But we need to be on guard. And our greatest attack in this unseen warfare is to unite ourselves to Christ. Okay? So I want to talk just a little bit about kind of the very basic nature of what this unseen warfare looks like. Because until we know what it looks like and how to defend ourselves beyond just be united to Christ, we're going to continue to fight and get tired. When we get tired, we get despondent. When we get despondent, we fall away. I've seen it hundreds of times. Okay? Every Christian, and the things I'm telling you, a lot of it is from Theophan's translation of Unseen Warfare. It's a great book. But you got to read it with caution because it's terrifying. I read the first 10 pages. Again, I hadn't read it in years. I'm like, oh, I need to go to confession. That was my first thought. Because you're so convicted in the first few pages about how negligent we are in this unseen warfare. Every Christian, now listen to those words, not monks, or just monks, not just priests, not just really faithful people. Every Christian undertakes spiritual, unseen warfare when? From the moment of their baptism. So, to the people I talked to this weekend and I said, yeah, life's a struggle because you were baptized like 12 days ago. Makes sense. Because you undertake spiritual warfare from the minute of your baptism. That's why when we baptize you, we say that you are now a warrior of Christ Jesus. You have a different team. You're on a different side of the battle. And the demons, because they're working from the outside, they just cause more noise. Your life, can I be honest? Your life and your interaction with the demons is probably not more or less than it was before you were baptized. It's just louder now. You just know it now. It's not like the demon said, unless you were really fallen away. It's not like the demon said, oh, you know what, we got that person, no worries, let's leave him alone. It's just now you've been fortified by the grace of baptism and you can hear them banging on the door outside. I want in. What do the Gospels say? The gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But they're going to bang, and you're going to hear it. Okay? Every Christian undertakes this spiritual unseen warfare from the moment of baptism. We have made in our baptism, please listen. I wish I could say I have every one of these lines. Listen carefully. We have made, because of our baptism, a vow, a promise that we will fight for God. That we will fight on that side. Okay? Who's got their phone handy real fast? Look up Ephesians 6:12. It was too much to write down, so I didn't write it down. Ephesians 6:12. Who's got it? Josh, go ahead and read that. Oh, go ahead and read it. You can read it.
Christians do not wrestle against people, but against spiritual forces of evil, including rulers, authorities, and cosmic powers in the heavenly realms.
Read it one more time, slowly and prayerfully.
Ephesians 6:12 states that Christians do not wrestle. Wait, that might not be the.
I think that's your. Yeah. That's why I asked to read it slowly and prayerfully.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. Don't worry.
For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms.
So our fight is not against flesh and blood. That's why in the homily this morning I said, we don't fight by wrestling the world. I don't know what language I use, but that's not the fight. The fight is against powers and principalities and the forces outside of this world, the spiritual forces. And this battle begins from the moment you're baptized, because you have chosen someone else's side. It's the reason we don't baptize people quickly here, because I want to make sure that someone like Josh, 2 months after the going gets tough, he doesn't say, I'm going back to the other side. Because that's guaranteed spiritual death. Okay? In this fight, there are 3 categories, Unseen Warfare says. Warriors, the commander, and the marshals and the general. Who are the warriors? That's us. We're the warriors. We're fighting. We're engaged in the battle. Who's the commander? Who's the commander of the army?
I'm going to say you, Father Josh.
No, I got my own. I'm a warrior with you. I'm just in a different. I'm fighting in a different place, but I'm a warrior. Christ is the commander, and the marshals and the generals are the guardian angels and our patrons, our saints, and all the hosts of heaven. So what you see here is this battle, this unseen warfare, is a cosmic battle that's taking place. That's why we talk about sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. Oftentimes we don't see it as much anymore because, as I said, think about all the ways we've masked the demonic in today's world. Oh, you're a man but you feel like a woman, become a woman. That's crazy, right? Oh, you've got all these spiritual illnesses. Don't worry about going to church, just take this medicine. You should take the medicine. You should also go to church. We just talked about this earlier. What's the role of spiritual medicine and physical medicine? Okay? The world says, it's just, you're having a bad day. And we say, no, I'm engaged in the unseen warfare. Now, I'll end by saying this, because there's still more, but we'll pick that up next time. The enemy that we fight is twofold. Who's our enemy? There are 2 enemies, as it were. Yeah, so I'm gonna say demons, but the devil is commanding them. What's our other enemy?
Ourselves.
Thank you. Our passions. Okay? These are which is really ourself. Whoever said it over there is right. The demons and our passions. These are the enemies that we're fighting. So sometimes the enemy is within. Sometimes the enemy is from without. The ones we can really kind of begin to master on our own are the passions. And we've talked about this before. The passions, like the deadly passions that affect us, what are the antidotes to these passions? If you come to confession regularly, sometimes I'll even ask you, what passion do you think it is that's working most on your life? And sometimes you give an answer and I say, yeah, that sounds right. And sometimes you give an answer and I say, wait, have you thought about this? It might be this passion. Sometimes we think, for example, the passion is, pride. I'm really prideful. When in reality, the passion might be lust of power. We might think the passion is lust of power, and really we're just despondent. We can't imagine a way forward, so we want to control everything in our life. Okay? Uh-oh. So these are the two enemies, the demons and the passions. Okay? The last thing I'll say is this. What is the goal of the Christian life? According to Jesus in the Gospels. Yeah. Yes. That, although theosis never appears in the Gospels, and union with God as a phrase never appears in the Gospels. What does Jesus say? Be ye what?
Be ye one.
Be ye as your Father in heaven is.
Perfect.
Perfect. Be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Perfection is the goal. And we can't say, brothers and sisters, it's not possible. That's what the West says. Right? That's why I drew the dung-covered, snow-covered heap. The West says you're never going to be perfect. Just thank God that He just looks at you differently now. That's not what the Gospels say. Nowhere does Jesus say, you're always going to be a miserable sinner, keep living that way, but I'll look at you differently. He doesn't say that. He says, be ye perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. And this is not just in action, but it's in true perfection, which the fathers say, Theophan himself translates this. He says, true perfection is not in just outward actions like, oh, I kept the fast. If you'd have a temptation, I'll look at your husband, Jason, you'd have a temptation to enjoy Thanksgiving on Tuesday and begin fasting very rigidly in the Nativity fast and get through Nativity and say, we did a great job. That is not the perfection Jesus is talking about. The Holy Fathers say that kind of action, fasting and prayer and giving and being kind and not speaking idle words and receiving the mysteries and repenting of your sins, these kinds of actions are the ones that help us get to true perfection. True perfection is to be united to Christ. True perfection is to be united to Christ. So you have to ask yourself every day, am I putting myself in a position where I'm closer to Christ or further away? And as the Fathers tell us, the great deceiver in all of this, or the great deception in all of this, is when we think we are doing these things like fasting and praying and coming to church and giving. And when it stops here, it doesn't transform our life. The Fathers say what sets in then is what the Fathers call prelest. What is prelest? Prelest, yeah, it's a word that's very hard to translate to English. Prelest literally means delusion, or some of the Fathers translate it when they do as beguilement. You're beguiled. Sometimes they even talk about a mirage. You look at something and you see the trajectory of your spiritual life going one way, when in reality it's going the other way because you're so self-consumed. Okay? So these things, when our Lord says, be ye perfect, Theophan and Nicodemus say, perfection is not just in doing these things. These are a means to the end. What's the end? Union with Christ. Not in some faraway planet, but right here and right now. In this life. In this life. And if we think it's not possible, just look at all the relics we have upstairs. Those are people who in time join their lives to Christ, not just by being baptized, but by living the Christian life. And in time, these things, like the demons and the passions, they never stop warring against you, but they never win. They never win. Peter.
How do you avoid prelest if you're following everything that you're supposed to be doing?
Go ahead. Josh will answer. One Josh will answer. Me or him? Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I think that what I would say is let not your right hand know, or let not your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Okay. So one way is you never focus on the doing, right? You never think to yourself, if you ever have the thought, I've done something that will aid my salvation, you have to knock that thought out of your head. Okay? Well, how else do you what's the real answer? You prevent this by what? You have a spiritual father who says, be careful. Which is why sometimes, I don't remember, this was years ago, but I remember one time saying to someone, you do not have a blessing to fast. And they're like, what? I'm healthy? No, you don't have a blessing to fast. Because this has become the focus of your spiritual life. And it will turn into prelest, which is beguilement. So you do not have a blessing to fast. I one time had someone who said, I'm not prepared to receive the mysteries because they were overly scrupulous in their spiritual life. And their penance, if you can even call it that, was, you will receive the mysteries. Because it's going to kill you if you keep not receiving. The prayers say that. Let me not go for a certain period of time where I become the prey of the devil. So we can very easily become caught up in this deception, this beguilement, when we go at our spiritual lives alone. This is why you go to confession. This is why when the priest says, you know what, don't say all those prayers, just say these prayers, you say, okay, thank you. Okay? And that's how I am. I mean, I don't like everything that's told to me, but the people to whom I'm obedient, I say, okay. Because they're the ones who show us what the Christian life looks like, and if it's wrong, it's on them. It's on them. And I'm not more apt as my spiritual father than my spiritual father. You're not more apt to be your own spiritual father than I am to be your spiritual father. That's why you're here. Okay, that's why you're here. And once we begin to think, I'm my own spiritual father, you quickly become your own God. And then the ballgame's over. Okay? Obedience and faithfulness and prayerfulness. We'll keep talking about this because it's very important. Especially again, I mean, I don't know about you, maybe since I stopped working in the hospital, it's been very strange because maybe I just wasn't out in the world very much, or I wasn't in the car very much, or I don't know. But to me, like, I am so keenly aware of the darkness that's in the world, and I just want us to be careful because it is unseen often. We feel it, we sense it, but we don't see it. And because of that, it can be very dangerous if we're not on guard. But on guard means I'm not going to give in to my passions, and I'm going to continue to bring myself near to Christ. That's the answer. Okay?